Welcome in to another edition of the 5 Reasons Podcast. My name is Chris Whittingham, joined as always by Ethan Skolnick, who joins me over the phone again today as he was for our emergency podcast. If you want our reactions to the Ryan Tannehill signing, the Ryan Tannehill trade, you can find that on our feed, which you're listening to right here, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out our reaction to the Ryan Tannehill trade to the Titans. And now, Ethan, we were being asked to do an emergency podcast for the signing that the Dolphins have made today, and I feel like the signing requires a normal level of urgency, not emergency level of urgency. So Ryan Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins, your thoughts?
Well, this is one of the guys we called, right? I can't remember. There have been so many. I know that, CK on the pod with me kind of called Josh McCown. I don't feel like there's a ton of difference here. And I do know we had Benjamin Albright on right before the Super Bowl, and Fitzpatrick was his choice. And here we are, what is it, like 6 weeks later, and that's who it is. And he's one of the names that I've been mentioning a lot. I think we got, a little, held up because of the Tyrod Taylor thing, the Teddy Bridgewater thing. But I've said this on a previous podcast. I thought that Fitzpatrick might make sense for them because he sort of checks all the boxes, right? So you don't want to go into the season with Jake Rudock or David Fales or, David Falk or Luke Falk or whatever it is his name is, Marshall Falk. You don't want to go into you don't want to go into the season, Peter Falk. You don't want to go into the season with one of those guys because, God, how are you going to sell that? This is not easy, okay, but how are you going to sell that? You're going in with a guy who's never won an NFL game, in any of those three choices. And so Fitzpatrick made sense because it gives you sort of the veneer of, trying, right? Because, he has won 57 NFL games. He's lost 83, by the way. He's won 57. And so it gives you that. But at the same time, that he's going to get worse as the season goes on and therefore is going to lose you enough games so you get your next quarterback. And that's kind of the deal. Now, they'll shape it another way. They'll portray it as here's the Harvard guy. I know he looks like Conor McGregor, but he's a Harvard guy who they'll put in the quarterback room, and he will be good for the other quarterbacks, that whoever it is that they're developing, whether it's they're developing somebody into a backup this year down the road or whether or not they're drafting somebody, that they have someone in there who has some level of competence, understands how to play the position, and can pass that on. And I'm sure they discussed that with him. So that's, to me, it makes sense. It sort of checks all the marks. And I saw Dave Hyde's column tonight. He said the same thing. It's basically, we're pretending to try. And so, you look at Fitzpatrick, and we're gonna dive deeper into this a little bit. But I do like when sort of my perception of things matches the numbers.
Sure.
And so one thing that I've said repeatedly with Fitzpatrick, and if you look through his situation before he got paid with Buffalo, with the Jets, and then also with the Bucks, that he starts seasons hot and then falls apart. Okay, so I just looked at the numbers. In September, his career record is 16-11. He has an 87.5 passer rating, a sort of decent 50 to 37 touchdown interception ratio. Okay, in October, he's 10-22. The rating goes to 82.9. In November, he's 12-27. The rating goes to 83.2. And in December, his record's okay at 17-21, but his rating crashes to 72.8. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of passer rating, but it's what we have, right? So basically what this indicates is that he starts seasons pretty hot. He's chucking the ball all over the place. And other teams kind of figure him out. If you look at his career December, his 38 games in December, he has an average yards per attempt of 5.4.
Yikes.
That's anemic, with a ton of sacks and a ton of picks. 40 interceptions in 1,084 attempts. That's a lot. And so you know what you're getting. Like with the other young quarterbacks around, so you have no idea what you're getting. But with this guy, you know what you're getting. And so I don't know if he'll even survive behind this offensive line, if he'll survive to November. But if he does, he probably won't be very good in it.
So the thing that has sort of been asked now in the aftermath of the Fitzpatrick signing is, yes, obviously it is respectable, but Is it bad enough? Again, it depends. It depends on how bad you want this to be. But his career winning percentage is that of roughly a 6-win quarterback, which I don't think is ideal in terms of being in the top 5. And then last year, you look at when he takes over in that New Orleans game for the suspended Jameis Winston. You remember he came here in the preseason and absolutely lit up Miami. But he starts in the first few games in for Jameis Winston, and in his first 4 starts, there are 3 400-yard games and 3 games of a game of 3 touchdowns and 2 games of 4 touchdowns. And then later on in the year, as Tampa Bay has a carousel of quarterbacks, brings back Fitzpatrick, and he throws for 400 yards against Washington, albeit in a 16-3 loss. So you go back and look in that opening week game, which is kind of the shock result of the season when you look back on it. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 21 of 28, 417 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then I will say, though, there is one key difference, and that is that in that game, Mike Evans had 7 catches for 147 yards, and Deshaun Jackson had 5 catches for 146 yards, and no one in this Dolphins receiving corps is that prolific. But if the goal is to really be bad, and look, Adam Schefter tweeted straight after the signing that, the Dolphins signed Ryan Fitzpatrick for 2019 with an eye on Tua Tagovailoa in 2020, and throughout the process, it has been pretty clear that Adam Schefter knows the Dolphins thinking about what they want to do, but is this player bad enough? Even understanding that he has thrown a lot of interception in his career, he's a bit crazy with the football, he's 36 years old and is nothing more than a career journeyman, he still wins, he is still roughly a 6-win quarterback in the NFL, and that might be too good, particularly with the season he just came off of, in which he was pretty prolific from a statistical point of view. This
is such a ridiculous conversation. It's just such a. I mean, even with the Marlins, like we have, and you and I, talking to Mike Hill, I think we both sort of came away with what the plan is with the Marlins. I still don't really totally understand it with the Dolphins. Maybe we'll have Chris Greer on that would be helpful in terms of explaining it. But I just it's such a ridiculous conversation. It's what CK and I talked about. I know you and I have sort of bandied this about on several podcasts, but I just don't think that can be the mindset. Like the way CK frames it is, okay, everything is about 2020 and 2021. But it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're going out to I mean, this is not Major League the movie. Like, is it? Like, right?
I mean,
are we going to be taking? Are we going to have like a placard, like a standing placard of Steve Ross in the locker room, and you're going to be taking off a piece of his clothing every time you lose? Like, what is this? Okay, well, there's no Willie Mays Hayes, right? I mean, I don't. Maybe there is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's Kenny Stills. Who knows? But I don't think you can look at it like, is he bad enough? I think everything is about papering this thing over until you get to the time you can really take your quarterback. Because let's be honest, they up, okay? They up. I mean, they planned, they were bad in the wrong year, okay? They tried to patch. I mean, I don't want to rehash everything, okay? But they're in a position now where they have to at least make it look like they're trying. I don't know what they sell. Like, I was thinking about this as I was watching the Heat today, okay? And they had a good win against Charlotte, which I'm sure we'll get into the Heat more later in the week. But I'm thinking, like, the best development for the Heat over the past week to 3 weeks has been, like, Justice Winslow's emergence. Like, I can feel like they can sell something this offseason. Like, right? Like that, I mean, because they've been pushing Dwayne on 95% of their marketing. And I'm like, okay, at least now, like, between Justice and Josh and Bam, like, they have something to sell. I don't know what the Dolphins have to sell. I mean, what, Xavier Howard and Laramie Tunsil, 2 players they may or may not extend? Like, what are they selling?
Yeah.
So it's just, a new coaching staff, okay, but nobody knew who Brian Flores was.
But does is Ryan Fitzpatrick that thing that you're selling? Like, I don't know if it gets people to the building.
But it's like the illusion. Okay, he's not Tannehill. I want to check out. Hold on, before we move on. I put up a poll. I'm really curious about this one. I put up a lot of polls on 5 Reasons Sports, as you know, and we'll do a lot more of that with the website. We have 5reasonsports.com. But I put up a lot of polls, and I know you don't love unscientific polls, but I think it gives you some idea, okay? And a lot of my polls end up 50-50. I put this one up 4 hours ago, right before I left the Heat game. Better right now, Tannehill, Fitzpatrick. Guess what it is?
I don't even want to know.
Guess what it is? Better right now.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, 58-42. Oh, 50-50. Oh, wow. But yeah, I mean, just even the idea that it's that close. And look, I mean, as much as you can make fun of that, I mean, Ryan Tannehill had 4 games. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 4 games that a year ago that we've kind of wanted Ryan Tannehill, just like crazy statistical output, and your team scores 48 points. Like that game that Tampa Bay had in New Orleans a year ago. I mean, that's a dream for the Miami Dolphins. 48 points, and you beat the Saints on the road with your quarterback throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, I'm pretty sure if Ryan Fitzpatrick were 24 and a free agent, and he just had that game, we would be crazy excited about that. And the idea that a Dolphins quarterback could do that. And look, maybe he'll have a couple of those, and those will be fun games. But again, with the broader context of losing is winning for this year, I think there is a little bit of this season that feels like Major League, and certainly there's at least a segment of the fan base that would sort of at least take that on board and understand that. So I do kind of wonder if he's too good. I will say though, in a transition year, and we're looking at all these transition quarterbacks, Bridgewater and Taylor and a few more of these guys. This is the most fun option, just because Ryan Fitzpatrick is so crazy up and down, but you will have the ups that make it fun. But are those ups something that you want?
Well, yeah, look, it's funny because he's a crazy option. He's a Harvard guy. It's so weird. But look, he and Tannehill are polar opposites. I mean, Ryan, one Ryan takes no chances, very few, and the other takes all the chances. I mean, they're complete polar opposites. I mean, like you said, the people who wanted bombs away are going to get that now. But what I keep coming back to is you keep saying this thing, and I just don't think it's going to play out, which is that Dolphin fans would get on board with that. Yes, a few fans on Twitter who are big picture, but most of them are not. I mean, Dolphin fans who are not following, who are casual Dolphin fans, who are not following the day-to-day moves, they're just going to go to the stadium in September and be like, what the bleep is this? Okay. I mean, they're not, you and I think, get caught in this bubble because, I mean, we do this. So we think that everybody's paying close attention to, why the Dolphins are doing what they're doing. But they're just going to show up to a game to drink beer, okay, and eat overpriced hot dogs, and they're going to look around and be like, what is this garbage? And so, I mean, I think that's something the Dolphins have taken into consideration, and that's why you at least had to throw out a quarterback that, like, somebody's heard of. You can't throw – because it's different, like, a couple of years ago. Like, look at Denver. Okay, so Denver drafts Paxton Lynch, and they draft Trevor Siemian. And Siemian beats out Paxton Lynch, even though he was drafted a lot lower. But at least, like, you could sell that to Broncos fans because, look, we drafted 2 guys, okay? And this guy Siemian was pretty damn good in camp. And so we gave him the job, okay? But you can't – how are you going to pitch, I mean, Falk and Rudock and Fales to Dolphin fans? Like, they didn't draft any of them. I mean, Falk was drafted and dumped, okay, after a year. And then this team took it over, but the guy apparently liked him was Gase, who's not even here. So I don't. So you had to bring in somebody. I mean, again, you have to pretend for your casuals. You have to pretend you're trying. You can't because there's a very small segment of the fan base that understands the way that the NFL or NBA or MLB works and kind of what you're trying to do. I mean, look, Mike Hill sold us, I think, on his vision, right? But that doesn't mean people are flocking to the ballpark this year. Like, we can post that Mike Hill podcast every day and sort of explain the type of athletes that they're looking for, the type of velocity they're looking for from their pitchers, what the plan is. But that ain't going to make somebody decide to leave Doral at 6:30 from work and go down to the stadium. I mean, it's just not.
But does that? I guess my question is, does that matter? I mean, like, because the Marlins are ultimate. I mean, the Marlins are ultimately they're tanking, right? But they're going to have 8,000 fans. They're going to have 8,000 fans at their ballpark, but they're doing it for the eventuality that maybe they will have more than 8,000 fans at their ballpark because they built a really good team and are winning a championship. And if I'm telling your fans, okay, maybe you're not going to show up on a Sunday, you're going to stop watching on a Sunday, but if in the following draft, like, fans get excited about the NFL draft, and if I'm telling you that the Dolphins have the number 1 pick and are drafting one of the best college prospects we've seen for a long time, I imagine the fans will be on board with that. So it doesn't have to be. I mean, fans didn't show up for the process in Philadelphia, in their droves, but when they have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and they're in the playoffs, everyone's there and everyone's fired up and have almost built up this sort of pent-up energy of, well, this is sort of the fruition of a plan coming together. And that is always kind of my thought about this, is that if it's a plan and it comes together and it works, then I do think that the fans will eventually be on board because it will be successful.
But what is the plan? The
plan is to lose.
Okay, but okay, the Marlins, first thing, you use the word tanking for Marlins. I don't think that's what the Marlins are doing. I think it's different in baseball. Like, I think what they did by trading 5 core, lineup pieces could be perceived that way. But again, they were rebuilding their farm system, okay, which immediately, not waiting on picks, okay, which you have to do in the NFL and NBA. They were getting, stuff back, okay, to replenish their system. They're not there yet, but it's better than it was. I don't think they're tanking. I also think it's a different situation. I mean, Marlin fans, like the Marlins could literally disappear like the Panthers could. I hate to say this, and no one would know, like except Craig Mish and Steve Goldstein. Like no one would know. Like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, but people with the Dolphins, like they have a lot of casuals. Like that's what the Panthers and Marlins don't have, right? Like the Panthers and Marlins have hardcore fans. They exist. They're on Twitter. They're complaining about how much we cover or don't cover. Marlins fans need to stop complaining. We're covering the team more than anybody else in spades. Okay, 10 times, tenfold.
Who are these
okay?
people? I would like to meet them.
I get some of that garbage, and I'm like,
Okay.
excuse me, are you listening to terrestrial radio? Are they talking about your team? About anything good? Okay,
like
we have
almost
at
all.
podcasts to cover you. Okay, but so look, so the Marlins and the Panthers, they don't have casuals. They don't have casuals. Like there's that. But Dolphin fans like have casual fans. A lot of them, okay, who say they're Dolphin fans but know nothing about the team. Like I run into these people all the time. Okay, they're all over the place. There are thousands and thousands of them. The Heat have them now too, by the way. Okay, they didn't for years, but now they do after the big 3. But the Dolphins have them, and so those casuals, like I just don't know how you're going to sell them on trying to lose. Like we live in South Florida. We don't live in Cleveland.
But what I'm saying is you don't have to. You don't have to. Okay, so your stadium is half empty for the year. As by the way, Cleveland's was half empty as they're going 0-16. But if you ask a Cleveland fan, obviously you would prefer that it was 1-15, right, rather than 0-16. But if you go 1-15 and you still have Baker Mayfield, so basically a year on from going 0-16, they have Baker Mayfield, a quarterback they feel great about, and they just traded for Odell Beckham, and they're throwing money around like crazy and building together a really good team a year and a half later. Like, I don't think any fans that went through that are not, obviously they didn't enjoy it, but I don't think that means that you're, forever staying away from the Browns or from the Dolphins or whoever.
The bandwagons have jumped back on in Cleveland, yes. Okay, but I was up there before the process occurred, okay, 14-15, right as I think they hired Sashi Brown in 15. And we talked about this many times, that guys like Hinkie and Sashi Brown don't get to see it through. I don't know if Mike Hill or Chris Greer is going to get to see it through, okay, because a lot of times you don't get a chance to see it through. But look, the Browns have a hardcore fan base, okay? A lot of them did stay away, all right? I mean, the Browns are number 1 in Cleveland. It's not close. I mean, now LeBron's gone. It's really not close. But it wasn't close even when he was there. I mean, more people identify as Browns fans than Cavs fans. It's the number 1. That and Ohio State are
right.
Two top. Okay, and so, but yeah, a lot of those people disappeared. And now, yes, they're going to be bandwagoners. I mean, you're going to have casuals. Everybody's going to come back because you have a really good roster. But what I'm saying is and look, the Browns have been kind of similar, maybe even worse than the Dolphins over the past 20 years. I mean, they're like the only team in the league that's had more quarterbacks. But this idea, again, I think you and I have to get out of the bubble and think like, yes, if we're at Sloan Conference, okay, and we're looking at our spreadsheets, and I'm not that far behind you on this stuff, okay, but you and I can look at it and say, this is the practical thing to do for the Dolphins. This is the practical thing to do, like being 6-10 and signing, between 6-10 and 8-8 and signing Jay Cutler's to $10 million to save your season does not make any freaking sense anymore, okay? And I'm with you on that. But I'm just telling you, 90% of Dolphin fans are not like you and me. They're not. It's just something they do on a Sunday, and they don't want their team to suck. And so I do think that throwing Fitzpatrick out there, we know it's just, I mean, it's dressing, okay? I mean, it makes you look somewhat competent. And here's the other thing. If a Luke Falk, let's say that a Luke Falk or one of these guys, okay, somebody they draft in the 4th round, if a Luke Falk looks better than Ryan Fitzpatrick in camp, at least there's a measuring stick, right? Because we know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is, okay? So if you go into camp, I mean, I'm expecting Ryan Fitzpatrick to beat all these guys out easily because he's competent, okay? He's not good, but he's competent enough, okay? He knows how to play the position. Better probably than Tannehill does, actually, by the way, because I never felt Tannehill really learned the position. I mean, I think Tannehill had some skills that were useful, but I don't think he ever really learned how to fully play the position. So and Fitzpatrick has been a quarterback all his life. I mean, I've talked to him a bunch, actually. I've done some stories that he was involved in. He was at a tournament at Lake Tahoe where bunch of prominent guys where I interviewed him for a book that I was going to write that I never ultimately wrote. I mean, I like him. Okay. I like him. And I think he has, I think, like you said, he's capable of the 400-yard game that Ryan Tannehill is not. The only big number game from this past year was Brock Osweiler against Chicago at home. He has a great defense. So look, I think that Ryan is, Fitzpatrick is good enough that you'll be able to measure the young guys against him. Okay. And so maybe you see if one of these young guys can be your future backup, right? I don't think any of them is a Kirk Cousins, okay, or somebody like that who's going to kind of emerge out of nowhere. But can he be sort of a Brian Hoyer, okay? Can one of these guys be a Brian Hoyer? So that kind of player, okay? So it's fine in that regard. But this fear that you have of a guy being too good, I mean, if Ryan Fitzpatrick is too good, he'll get hurt because they'll let him get hurt. Okay, I mean, they're perfectly capable of it. They have one offensive lineman. Okay, what, right? I mean,
yeah,
they let Jawad James go. Josh Sitton's gone. Kilgore wasn't very good last year. I guess he's still on the roster. The Sitton move, by the way, in talking to CK and Alfredo about this, they don't understand that one. There was no benefit to cutting him. So I don't. So maybe you're right. Maybe
for me, that one is just an old player, and we want to put a younger player because we want that younger player to grow. That would be the only reason why you make that move. Is that Sitton is old?
I can see that. You can also let him beat him out of camp. I mean, because there was no real cap value to it. Like, I mean, go back to Jimmy Johnson. Like, comes in with the Dolphins. One of his first signings is Jack Del Rio. Okay. And he's going to be the middle of his defense. And then there was this 5th-round draft pick that nobody expected anything from, and Zach Thomas, and he kicked his ass in camp, and JJ cut Jack Del Rio. So, I mean, you can do it in camp. Like, and again, I don't think there's a net. Like, I'm okay with letting Gore and Amendola go, but I don't think there's a negative to having competent veterans in camp if you can release them without cap cost, right? Because it gives these younger players a bar to know what it is that they're going up against. So I guess, look, this did not deserve – I guess the whole point of this is there's nothing with the Dolphins that deserves an emergency podcast the rest of the way, honestly. Like, okay, we're doing this because we needed a topic, and we're thankful that they hired a quarterback, or that they brought in a quarterback. But I mean, the only thing that would require an emergency podcast is if they decide to trade Xavier Howard now, but which I don't think they're going to do. Mm-hmm. So – it is what it is. They will try. I don't know what they're going to sell, though. That's my question. Every team needs something to sell to their casuals because the hardcore fans don't drive the money for teams. They don't. It's the people. The people that have season tickets. Yes, you need a certain base. There's no question about that. I'm sure the Dolphins' base has receded considerably, but you need the people who are going to decide to buy the 3 single game tickets. And they're going to buy, like I said, the hot dogs and the beer and the candy and all the rest of that.
And really, and more importantly, I would say the sweets, right? I mean, you need corporations to buy in, and like I don't know if a corporation's going to sit around going, I don't know if I'm going to spend my $80,000 on my suite this year, so to go and watch a bad team, and I think the people who make those decisions are far more likely to be the kind of casuals we're talking about than the super fans and the super dorks like us that are analyzing this. I do want to hit on a couple more questions here very quickly before we move on to an interview that we'll bring to you about the Super Bowl 54 coming to Miami and some of the details of what's going to be happening down here in South Florida. So I guess my first question is, what do you make continually of the fact that Adam Schefter has these reports about what the Dolphins are going to do, and the fact that the Dolphins are still eyeing Tua Tagovailoa in 2020 as he frames his own breaking of news of this signing? Because I continue to be amazed that the Dolphins, via his tweets and via his reporting, are that kind of nakedly telling you what they want to do.
No, I buy it because Steve Ross can't keep quiet. I mean, it's just obvious. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, Ross has typically done it to one of the locals, but he seems to be doing it to Schefter now. And, I don't think the Dolphins have ever been particularly good about hiding where stuff's coming from. The Heat's very good at it. Very good at it. Okay, like you don't know where it's coming from typically. I mean, there's a couple of people that tend to get stuff and then I can kind of identify it. But the Dolphins have always been kind of very obvious about it. Like, and I'm talking about like the last 15, 20 years. Like, so a lot of it coincides with a certain owner taking over too. So I think that Ross. We've talked about why. I don't really totally get it. I think he's sort of trying to set expectations low, I guess, and so he doesn't put pressure on the organization or his coaching staff. But he's
what
also
if this is just actually what he wants to do?
Right, but it is counterproductive if you're trying to bring fans in. Like, don't they have to pretend a little? I keep coming back to the same point, but like, how are they going to get people to buy tickets? Like, what are they selling? Like, I guess the players that they draft, perhaps. I mean, but if they draft correctly, this is the problem. If they draft correctly, they really should be drafting the trenches this year, right?
Sure.
Like, that's what they need. They have one offensive lineman. They just let their best pass rusher for the last 10 years walk. Okay, like they need to build the two lines. Like they don't have an elite interior defensive lineman. They don't have a defensive lineman of note. Period. Right? I mean, do they?
No. No. From a defensive line standpoint, they're as barren as it gets.
Okay, and the offensive line, like they have one player on their two lines. I mean, I like Vincent Taylor, okay, but I mean, I don't think he's going to be elite, but I think he's a good player. But you're talking about 5 offensive linemen, plus you need at least one competent swing player. So you're talking 6, and you need 5 or 6 defensive linemen in the modern NFL. You're talking like a dozen players. They've got 1, maybe 2. I mean, so that's what they have to draft. They have to draft the trenches. How are they going to sell that to fans?
I have no idea. I will say, though, I'm not worried about their attendance in 2019 because I just looked at their opponents. They're only going to have a hard time, in my opinion, selling tickets to 2 games. Home with Cincinnati and home with the Los Angeles Chargers, because those are not traveling fan bases. But Buffalo, there's a crap load of Buffalo fans. New England and the Jets. Those are obvious, right? Here's the rest of their home schedule this year. Baltimore.
Buffalo game was empty this year, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, but Buffalo is a bit dire. You wonder if Josh Allen, maybe it'll get better and more fans will come. It might be earlier in the year and more fans will come. But Buffalo, I mean, just in general, travel well because of the changing climate. But then here's the rest of the home schedule. Home with Baltimore. I mean, there will be a shed load of Ravens fans there. Washington. I mean, you don't see the enthusiasm at home, but Washington are kind of is one of the national teams that I feel like would draw a fan base here to the stadium. It's too bad that they don't play the Giants at home because they're playing the NFC East, but they do have Philadelphia at home. And there will be a ton of Eagles fans there at that game. So, I mean, really, I almost wonder if it's like the Florida Panthers December 28th against the Montreal Canadiens game situation where they're selling to opposing fans.
Right. Well, the Dolphins have done that. Ross did that. He did that for Gator Day when the Broncos were down with Tebow. That's always great with the Panthers. It's like, come see us. Well, actually, no, don't come see us. Come see the Rangers and the Canadians and the Maple Leafs and the Bruins and the Flyers. Like, come see them. Don't come see us. This is kind of where we are. I think it's very. I think it's very possible that they could have some seats already sold too. I think all these teams. I don't know what the Dolphins did specifically. I know what the Heat tend to do. You kind of get trapped into the tickets for a couple of years. And so, maybe it won't – it's going to look bad on TV. Maybe some of them be sold. I don't know which Ross cares about, whether they're actually – where people are paying or where they're actually in the seats. But it's going to look bad on television. But I'm just trying to figure it out. I think next time we do a Dolphins pod, we need to identify what it is this team is selling. Mm-hmm. Right now, they're selling, a 19-year-old who has not even decided – at this point when he's coming out. Like, it is going to be the most Dolphin thing ever. And Alfredo said this on 3 Yards this week. When they get the number 1 overall pick and 2 his parents decide they want him to get his degree. Yeah. Okay.
I was very scared listening to that portion of their emergency pod. I was like, holy crap, he might not come out. This is terrifying.
Right. It's very doable. It's very possible. I mean, it sounds like his priorities are not where Dolphin fans' priorities are.
If I'm Stephen Ross and I can legally do so, I am making many phone calls to as many people close to Tua Tagovailoa as possible saying, no matter when you come out, no matter for how long you're with our team, I'm making you a promise I will pay up to your doctorate if you want. There is no amount of education I will not provide for you. Totally free. Every amount of education. You can go to as many schools you want. You can go to Cambridge if you like. There is no number of schools that I will not pay for once you're done playing football.
And then what he'll do, he'll make that deal, and then Tua will blow out his knee the next
Stop it! Stop making this like a negative scenario. It'd be great.
Well, the stadium was built on an Indian burial ground.
That's true. That is true. All right, so a few more rapid fire ones. Number one, if Ryan Fitzpatrick starts opening day, and he plays even a sort of decent number of games, will we have fun watching Dolphins football next year?
Not in totality, but there will be moments.
Yeah.
There will be moments.
Okay. Do you think that this signing even means that Ryan Fitzpatrick will be the opening day starter? You mentioned that you anticipate that he'll beat out the competition. I still think the Dolphins are drafting quarterback in the first 4 rounds, and I think that quarterback is the most likely quarterback to be the starter, even with this signing, in my opinion.
I don't think so. I think Fitzpatrick is just good enough that he will be the starter for the opener. I do. So okay. I think someone else could relieve him at some point, absolutely. But I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to look a lot better. He knows how to play the position. He's going to look a lot better in training camp than anybody else that they bring in, unless again it's excuse me, unless again it's a Kyler Murray or somebody like that they're not going to get.
And here's my last question for you, and we were talking about this today, particularly even in a racial context. Is it offensive to you that this is now Ryan Fitzpatrick's 8th team that he will be starting for? He will have started for, once he makes a start for the Dolphins, he will have started for a quarter of the teams in the NFL. And why is it that a quarterback now entering his age 37 season, who started 126 games and won about 40% of them, has a few more touchdowns and interceptions, and is generally not a very good player, why does he keep getting chances? Why do the career survive when, particularly, you compare it from a racial point of view to black journeyman quarterbacks who don't get nearly the same number of chances?
Well, I'm stealing this for a tweet, actually, because I want. What is Kaepernick? Hold on, I got to check what his career record is, because he's played for one team, right? One team.
Mm-hmm. One team.
Let's take a look.
His career record is 28-30. Most of that damage coming in his last 2 seasons when he was 3-16.
So he's gotten his start for one. He's 28-30. Thank you. You just got me 1,000 likes. Appreciate that.
Yeah, either way, I mean, why does Fitzpatrick have 8 chances and, Colin Kaepernick has 1? I mean, there are a few others, like Josh Freeman had to go with the Dolphins, and, Josh Johnson got to start a game for Washington last year when what the hell is Josh Johnson?
You know what Josh Johnson has become, and I always confuse him with the Marlins pitcher, former Marlins pitcher. Josh Johnson has become the guy that teams sign so they don't have to sign Kaepernick, and so they can say they brought in a black quarterback. So they bring in this guy who's horrible. Okay, he's the black Nathan Peterman. All right, they bring him in so they can say they brought in a black quarterback.
Yeah,
that's what.
Right, and that's kind of like the counterfactual. Tyrod gets another chance, and Bridgewater will get another chance. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of wonder, like, how does Josh McCown and Ryan Fitzpatrick get to exist? But either way, they do, and now Fitzpatrick will probably end up starting for his 8th NFL team. All right, that'll just about do it for covering this portion of it. We still have a lot more business to get to with the Dolphins. We'll kind of have a full offseason roundup, maybe after the draft, and kind of all the signings, all the ins and outs that have happened with the team.
No more emergencies. There are no more emergencies.
No, the emergencies are done. Can we have a quick 60-second question? What is the next emergency 5 Reasons podcast for?
Beckham moves to Palm Beach. That's it.
Beckham is now in Tampa.
Beckham's in Tampa. Yeah, good sell up there.
Yeah,
they're going to be playing in my house pretty soon.
They're playing well north of your house. I can tell you that.
I know that. Yeah.
I'm going to another government meeting on Tuesday. I can't wait. I'm going to a city of Fort Lauderdale meeting. Fantastic.
Please don't tell me about it.
All right, right now, though, we're going to do an interview. The Super Bowl is coming to Miami next year. The Dolphins will not be playing in it, but there is still a lot of joy to be had, and a lot of things to notice as the Super Bowl comes into our town for Super Bowl 54, the Live Super Bowl. And Ethan, we're going to be joined right now from someone from the Super Bowl committee.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to Brian Bishop, so we want to get a jump on the Super Bowl that the Dolphins will not be playing in, but we'll be watching, and as will all the rest of us.
we're about, I guess, 11 months out from Miami hosting another Super Bowl. And so we wanted to get into sort of what the early stage plans are there. Obviously, it's been a little while for this area. I've covered the last, I think, 2 that were down here in Miami. Maybe it's 3. And we're looking forward to it because the timing of it is pretty damn good. We've got our new sports network here, our new website, and then we're going to have a Super Bowl where we can feature all this content. So today we're going to talk to Brian Bishop. He's the Vice President of Sponsorships and Marketing for Super Bowl 54. Of course, the Studio 54 Super Bowl. Brian, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. How are you? Ethan, Chris, thanks for having us on.
Yeah. No,
Ethan, how do you call it the Studio 54 Super Bowl and not the Live Super Bowl?
Well,
what are you talking about?
No, I know.
What are you talking about?
Because I'm old, man. Like, you're 26 and I'm 85. So, yeah, it's been a while since I've been to Live. I think the last time I was at Live, Eric Dampier was partying with the wrong team. I guess I should call it. Of course, it's Live because it's LIV in Roman numerals. But, Brian, I want to start here with you. So last Super Bowl ends. Patriots, of course, do what they do again. And then it sort of gets turned over to you guys as the next hosts of the Super Bowl here. What was what was sort of that 24-hour period like, and kind of what was the pivot to we're on deck now officially?
Well, that's a good question. And for the record, there's 325 days, 11 hours, 32 minutes, and 26 seconds until kickoff for Super Bowl 54 or LIV. I like either reference.
But who's counting?
I also like them. Yeah, but who's counting? So we've been at this literally since we actually requested the opportunity to bid for the game with the NFL in 2014. We made a presentation to the owners in 2016 in May. We were lucky enough to get the game. They gave us Super Bowl LIV, which is also the 100th anniversary season celebration of the NFL. So you saw during the Super Bowl this year the Marshawn Lynch reaching for the football on the wedding cake and that whole commercial, one of the better commercials in my opinion this year for the Super Bowl. And that really kicked off the whole 100th season celebration. So Monday morning, 8:30, after a long night of partying in Atlanta with our team partners and everybody there, you're getting the ball from the Atlanta Host Committee and the Commissioner of the NFL. We had Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez there, our Chairman Rodney Barreto, contingent, and it's real. We're on the clock, and we've been planning, and we're ready to go.
And I wanted to ask about the way that these bids work, because I'm not entirely certain what one city, other than, in Miami, the Super Bowl will be held in 78 degrees and sunshine rather than in Minneapolis and in negative temperatures. And obviously it's a dome, but it's just a nicer place to hold it. What goes into bidding for the Super Bowl? And it would seem like Miami would have a fairly obvious advantage, but I guess my question would be, why don't we win this every year? What goes into the process for how Super Bowl hosts are determined?
You are now in charge of talking to the owners every single time there's a bid process for the Super Bowl, because we feel the same way. Quite honestly, it doesn't get any better than February and January than South Florida for this. Our hotel community, our restaurant community, our events mentality, our public entities, so Miami-Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County, everybody gets it, right? And so pulling off a big event like this for the folks in Houston, nothing against them, Minneapolis, or even Atlanta, it's a one-off kind of thing, right? But for us, our infrastructure is set up to do this. So when we go to the NFL and we put in a bid, it's obviously the weather. It's obviously we have the hotel rooms. A big part of our growing demand is the luxury hotel capacity that Miami has now compared to other cities. And so from that standpoint, everything checks the boxes. Thankfully, Stephen Ross, in his ownership of the Dolphins, decided that it was time to kind of make over now Hard Rock Stadium. And that really has put us over the edge. It's a world-class facility. We're going to have this Super Bowl as a result of his contributions to improving the stadium. And more than likely, we're going to get another one pretty quick after 2020. So the rotation will increase for Miami and South Florida.
Yeah, and you mentioned South Florida and Miami, and that's something I wanted to hit on with you because it's a discussion we have all the time. We're a South Florida-based network, which to me really represents Broward and Dade, and then a little Palm Beach thrown in. And so, we always have these internal debates on our string because we've got some guys who live in Dade and they won't come to Broward, and we got some guys in Broward like myself who prefer not to always go to Dade. I'm just curious for you because I remember the last Super Bowl was very Broward-centric compared to the previous one, from what I recall. Yep. I think that I remember it was off 17th Street, near Las Olas, in Fort Lauderdale. The Broward Convention Center was used for media as opposed to using South Beach, which typically I remember from a few years before. The reason I remember that so well is because Prince had a press conference and decided to play 2 songs instead of speaking to the media, which was pretty cool. But basically. Right. So I'm just curious because this is always a balance. Dade and Broward people, even though like my friend here, Chris, lives basically on the line in Hallandale, are very territorial about all this stuff. How are you going to balance the 2 counties?
So from that standpoint, we get great support from all 3 counties. The NFL will really drive or kind of dictate how they want a particular Super Bowl to look and or feel. So not just unique to South Florida or Miami, but even with Houston, Minneapolis, Atlanta, they will say, from an infrastructure standpoint, here's how we want to craft this particular event. In 2010, it was a very different game and a very different event. There are 2 events that are really public-driven events, Super Bowl Experience, which will be at the Miami Beach Convention Center, and then something new for us, called Super Bowl Live, which is a big fan-centered event. It's basically a free fan festival that will be at Bayfront Park. It'll be gated, public security will be in place, but it's basically a place where everyone can come, touch, and feel the Super Bowl. Wasn't even in existence in 2010. So the NFL looked at downtown Miami, how it's grown and changed. They looked at Bayfront Park and said there's no more picturesque place to showcase South Florida and the NFL's return to Miami than really taking Miami and making it a centerpiece. We'll still have events in Palm Beach County. We'll also have some events in Broward County as well. But really, it's a great time for us to be able to showcase how Miami has grown over the last 10 years and what it means to have a Super Bowl here. So we're really lucky.
And I can't anticipate the Miami Dolphins participating in the game and probably continuing that record of the host city not having the home team play in the Super Bowl. But I guess so. My question off of that would be, if not for a local interest in the team playing in the game, what would an interest of the local community be in having the Super Bowl here? Obviously, it's great for the business leaders of our community, but for just your average person that maybe wants to be around this event, how can they access it?
So, like I mentioned just a minute ago, Super Bowl Live will be a great opportunity for anyone who's in the region, whether you're traveling and visiting that time of year or whether you're a resident here. It's a week-long festival, starts the weekend before the Super Bowl, runs the full week of Super Bowl, and then if we play our cards right, and we're working on this, we're going to have a watch party for the game on that Sunday. Nothing's final yet. We're negotiating now with the league and also Fox from that standpoint. But that'll be a way for anyone and everyone to come and touch and feel the Super Bowl. And in Super Bowl Live, you'll have live music nightly. You'll have culinary activations. We're going to pair NFL players with Food Network chefs. You know, the Food and Wine Festival is a few weeks after Super Bowl, so we're going to take advantage of that and do some fun tailgate town culinary activations. And then global brands that are partnered with the NFL or strong local brands that are based here will have an opportunity to set up shop in Super Bowl Live, do some fun, entertaining activations, but then also promote their goods and services alongside on the Super Bowl platform. From an economic impact standpoint, that's another big part of why we do what we do. We're looking at north of $350 million in terms of economic impact for the region. So to have a Super Bowl here is obviously great visibility. The impressions, how Miami plays, on each outtake of newscasts that week or sportscasts that week, it's invaluable to us as a tourism-based, economy to have that kind of coverage. So the other way that someone could touch and feel and be a part of the Super Bowl is the volunteer. In 2010, we had 1,000 volunteers, and those folks helped us welcome people at each airport, helped people at local hotels, whether it's find a restaurant, find a concert time, when a party was starting, find a taxi cab at that time. And nowadays it's, Uber or Lyft or rideshare. In 2020, we're going to need 10,000 volunteers. And so that effort has changed dramatically. That's an opportunity for anyone here aged 18 and older to be a part of helping the Super Bowl come off without a hitch here in South Florida. So we're actually going to launch that application here in a few days. You'll be able to see that on our social media sites. Go to our website, apply to be a volunteer, and then the process to do that is, we interview you, we give you a great Super Bowl LIV uniform, and then, give you an opportunity to work alongside us as we put on Super Bowl 54.
So I want to get into the stadium itself, because you mentioned Steve Ross, and obviously Chris mentioned, I think the odds of the Dolphins playing in this game, they've always been long, but they're particularly long this time. But Steve Ross has made a contribution. Like you mentioned, the stadium has been completely renovated. I think it looks great, to be honest. I've gone to a lot of stadiums around the country. I'm very impressed with the way that they put the thing together and improving the fan experience. And I do think that matters these days, particularly not just Super Bowl, but during the week when there's so many options for people in some place like South Florida. And then obviously you can sit home and watch your fantasy teams, in your air-conditioned comfort of your house. And so to get people to the stadium, I do think it was necessary. But we've also got the tennis center going up as we're speaking here, or it's up, and you're going to have the tennis tournament there this year. Is there going to be anything around the stadium? Because I know sometimes that's a complicated area to do a whole lot. But now that you do have the tennis center, obviously there's been renovations to the stadium. Is there going to be anything in sort of that area, in proximity to the stadium, to Hard Rock?
Yeah, it's a good question. Game day is obviously a big part of any Super Bowl Sunday, no matter where you're at. So whether you're at home or you're hanging out with your buddies, or in South Florida, you're on your boat and, kind of chilling at the sandbar, game day is a big deal. For us at Hard Rock Stadium, it will be the center of most of the sanctioned and official tailgate parties. So the NFL will have a tailgate, the Dolphins will have a tailgate, the host committee will actually have a tailgate, and we're looking at areas around the stadium, in the stadium footprint, or in close proximity at Hard Rock Resort. There's a lot of great options there for us to do that type of thing, and we're very fortunate to have the footprints that we have within the city of Miami Gardens to be able to offer that. Another role that, we play as a host committee is, so we help those that are from outside of the community find space to do certain things. So we'll get different requests from various corporations or events companies that hold game day tailgates or parties, and they'll say, hey guys, we need a location to do this. We need 10 acres or 15 acres. Help us find a place. And at that point in time, we spring into action and we put together a list of options for them to consider. And close proximity to the stadium, there's a lot of great options, believe it or not.
So final thing here, and again, we really appreciate you taking the time, and obviously hopefully we talk more as we get a little bit closer to this. Is there one thing that you took from the past, let's say the past couple Super Bowls? Because I know, as you mentioned, Miami, if it was up to us too, it'd be down in Miami all the time, or certainly a warm weather city rather than, no offense, but sending it to Minneapolis or Indianapolis or anything like that, has just never made a whole lot of sense to me in February, except for rewarding teams for new stadiums. But is there anything from the past? Can you give us like one thing from the past couple of Super Bowls that you're like, wow, that's a good idea? I didn't really think of that. Maybe we'll incorporate something like that, maybe more Miami centric than those particular cities, but something that the past couple of cities have done well.
Well, I'll give you a little peek. So a little inside, behind the curtain peek, right? So, every city does corporate hospitality a little differently, right? So the folks in Minnesota and Minneapolis had an area called the Armory, right? And they converted that to basically a nightly concert or nightclub venue, right? And in Atlanta, there was the Tabernacle in different areas. So we're actually looking and planning off the shores of Bayfront Park on Biscayne Bay to set up a floating yacht village where, whether it's through purchasing through the host committee as a part of your ticket and hospitality package, or if you're a billionaire that has a 110-foot yacht and you want to bring it to Miami and use that as your corporate hospitality headquarters for the week, we're going to create an environment that can't be done anywhere else and take corporate hospitality and entertaining to a level that you can only do here, whether it's January, February, any time of the year. This is what we do best. So we're going to take advantage of what we have.
Absolutely, we should. And it's one of those things. I'm appreciative that it's coming back in part because I was commenting as I was covering another All-Star game about a month ago in Charlotte that like we never get the NBA All-Star game. Because obviously there's the boat show conflict and all these sort of politics that have gone into it because the Heat didn't want it for years, and then the NBA hasn't really sort of come back around to them. And so you're talking more than 30 years now since one of the premier cities in the NBA has gotten an All-Star game. And so it really is, the Super Bowl. And so it is pretty cool that it's coming back. Brian, we appreciate it. And certainly we want to talk to you in the future as we ramp this thing up a little bit. Maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe the Dolphins will be 14-2 with home field advantage, and we'll be talking about potentially them in the Super Bowl. But even if not, I know it'll be a great event. So, Brian, thanks for taking the time with us.
Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Five Reasons Podcast. Thank you so much.